Good evening, it's Mike Apps in for Louisa Hannon on Drive this evening on BBC Radio Solent. Now, in the news tonight, there are around 50,000 children in the UK who are homeschooled, and the numbers are increasing. A recent study found a 60% rise in primary school-aged children being taught at home and a 37% rise in secondary school children. Now, the government wants to introduce a mandatory register of home-educated children, along with increased monitoring and support from local authorities. So after a pair of cases involving home-educated children raised serious safeguarding concerns and led to a review. But home educators feel they're being unfairly targeted and today held a national picnic protest opposing the government changes, and one was held in Portsmouth. Well, we're going to speak to two home educators from the south in just a moment, but first, Roy Perry is the Conservative leader of Hampshire County Council and joins us now. Good evening.
Yes, hi, good evening.
Thanks so much for joining us. So, the government wants local councils to do more monitoring and offer more support to people who choose to educate their children at home. What's your reaction to this?
I think that's the right move, I really do. I mean, there is sometimes very good reason for children to be home educated, and I have no doubt that some parents can provide a very good education for their children. But there need to be some checks on this, and somebody needs to be sure that children who are being home educated are indeed receiving a good education. And at the moment, it would be very difficult for anybody to say precisely how many children are being home educated and to be guaranteed that those youngsters are getting the education they need and deserve.
I mean, I appreciate, obviously, what you say there, but what you're describing surely is going to be a pretty huge undertaking at a time when there's such a strain on local authorities with funding. I mean, how would you find the resources to do this?
Well, we would obviously say to the government if there are resources required for this, then the government would need to find those resources. But we do have a responsibility to all children. Every child matters. And I must say it seems slightly bizarre that people can take a child out of school and then there's none of the inspection and none of the assessment that we would expect to be given for children who are in school. So I think and the numbers are growing. Why are they growing? What are the reasons? All of that's got to be sorted out, but there really does have to be some check on it. And that is in no sense to criticise those good parents who are doing a very good job by their children.
Can you understand why some parents might be hearing this today and feeling that actually this takes away the trust that they've been able to rely on to deliver results for their children by educating in this way, that this is actually, treading on the toes of people who've decided this is the best way of educating my son or daughter?
I can see that, and I'm quite sure that the folk you have been speaking to are very positive and good, but I regret to say that isn't every case, and there will be some poor youngsters, sometimes not even known to the local authority that they even exist. They can move into an area and then not registered at the school, and this is, I think, is a loophole in the system that we owe it to all children to make sure that is plugged.
OK, well, thanks for joining us. I have to let you go. I know you've ducked out of a meeting to speak to us, so thanks for your time. That's Roy Perry, the Conservative leader of Hampshire County Council, speaking to us on BBC Radio Solent. Let's bring in some parents who educate their children at home. First on the line, we've got Laura Galloway from Havant, who home educates her own 3 children. She was at the picnic protest today. Good evening.
Oh, hello, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. So explain to us then, why did you take the decision to home educate?
Well, it came about quite bizarrely, actually, because we had no real idea about home education. And it seemed, in the end, to be the next option because school was inadvertently failing our child. So the school was a very good one. Our daughter was in year 1, so she was 5, rising to 6. And she developed social anxiety. There was no other reason. It wasn't about the school, it was about school. She was just not ready. It was very intense for her, and we just did the usual kind of parenting of go on Google a bit more, speak to people, join groups, go along to meetups, and suddenly, that was a decision. It was the right one to do, and ever since taking that decision, we haven't looked back, really.
Really, I mean, not just one child, but you've done this for your 3 children. I mean, this is clearly something that you must be an advocate of this.
people think that I'm absolutely crazy, but quite frankly, it's just been the biggest gift that life could have given myself and my husband to a degree. I mean, he full-time works, but, I'm able to facilitate my children's learning. I'm able to see what they're really good, what they really thrive at, what their skill set is, rather than, and don't get me wrong, I think school is fantastic. School works for a lot of people. It just doesn't work for us. And at school myself, I did quite well, and I came out a bit of a jack of all trades, master of none, not knowing what I wanted to do. And now we have the gift of being able to tap into our children's skill sets, to give them all the time and the support in the world that we can to help them develop those skills, and to let them become, quite frankly, experts if we want them to be by age 18. So we don't kind of chuck 15 subjects at them and say, learn a little bit of each and pass these exams. We say, what do you really like doing? What really floats your boat? What would you like to do, perhaps for the rest of your life?
Okay, so you took part in this protest today. Why was that important for you?
Okay, well, really, I guess it's a little bit of what we just heard. And with all due respect, I understand he's speaking from his own perspective. But there's really, I think, perpetuated by the government, there's a bit of an urban myth about us being hidden, us home educators. So personally, I felt it was important to raise awareness of just how many there are of us in the community, and that's nationwide as well, how diverse our community is, and to show that we're not invisible, we're actually all around you. And that's exactly what my 8-year-old said to me this morning. She said, but we're everywhere, Mummy, and we are, you just have to look around. So gathering in that park, I like to think less of a protest, more of a statement, really. We are here. We are not the invisible many, the abused families. Abuse happens everywhere, and that's a really unfortunate fact. It happens in schools. Neglect happens in schools. People get missed in schools. And this gives us a chance as parents. If we choose to take that legal right that's in the Education Act, we can exercise that right to give our children an education that we choose. And that's what we're doing. We're taking that right and moving forward with it.
Of course, I mean, very important, as you say, sadly, we know all too well in recent years that there have been cases of abuse right across society. But, to pick up on that point, you said abuse does go on in schools. Well, of course, there is monitoring. There are, people who, if things like this happen, then it's been missed by someone whose job it is to check for this. It might be argued that, there's no body that's responsible for checking on what's going on in people's homes as things stand when it comes to homeschooling. So that might be the argument here to present the case to do this. Yes,
I understand that fully. The thing is, again, we're back to that urban myth. There is a presence of checking. There is monitoring already, and it comes in the presence of local authorities who already have the right to do so and do exercise that right. Speaking about the area of Portsmouth particularly, they very much exercise their right to get in contact with home educating families. We have social services. We have doctors and dentists. We have so many different parts of society who monitor already, who are in contact. Unfortunately, these cases of missed children and abuse, like you said, they do happen in many different areas in life. Thankfully, they're very few compared to the horrors that we have in our mind. But I do feel that there is a degree of scapegoating that's happening. I'm not going to speak too much politically, but I do feel there's a degree of scapegoating going on.
Okay.
Where home education is kind of trying to be shown as unsafe or unseen, and it's just not the case. So I think that's why we joined up today. Sure. and show people our numbers.
Okay, well, thanks for joining us, Laura. That's Laura Galloway from Havant, who home educates her own 3 children, took part in this protest today. Finally, let's bring in Claire Marshall from Portsmouth, who home educates her 2 boys. Good evening, Claire.
Evening.
So your reaction then to what the government's been saying today about wanting to introduce this mandatory charter and have local authorities have greater scrutiny of parents educating their children in their homes, as you do?
Well, I think initially, who's funding this? Where's the money coming from? Who's going to be paying for this? At the moment, there's no extra resources being given out. So those children that really do need the extra help, there's going to be even less of it around because there's no extra funding being put in place for this at all. So that would be my biggest concern. And going back to what you were saying a minute ago to Laura about the children that do suffer from abuse, Jordan Burling, Dylan Seabridge, Victoria Colombier, they were all known to their local authority, home education departments and to social services. Sadly for them, that didn't make any difference at all. So I don't see how changing the guidelines is going to help.
But of course, when we have cases like that, just appalling tragedies like that, surely the natural response would be, okay, there are things in place that haven't made a difference. Let's try some more. The natural response wouldn't be to say, well, there's something in place. Hopefully it will pick things up in the future. It would be this impetus to try to just do everything possible to make sure these things don't happen.
Unfortunately, I don't think a register is going to make much difference. If someone's going to abuse their child, they're already breaking the law. So are they going to worry about breaking the law further by not being on a register or moving house to get away from the register so they're now not known? I don't really see how registering a huge number of people is going to make much difference, and it's just going to stretch the funding for those poor kids that actually need help even further, so there's going to be less help around for those that need it.
I appreciate, obviously, as you say, there's this question of resources. We spoke a few minutes ago there to the leader of Hampshire County Council, who believed this would come from central government. If this is brought in, it wouldn't be a stretch of their resources in his view. But beyond that, your objection to this, is it based on more than just funding? Would it make you feel, as a parent who's taken this decision, in your case, to educate your two boys, would you feel this isn't a nice feeling for you to be under this kind of scrutiny?
I don't think it's... my concerns really are about the fact that then leaving it to local authorities to decide what constitutes suitable education. So are each local authority going to get together on their own and make up their own minds? You could live on the border. A friend who lives in Hampshire could have a completely different set of guidelines to the ones I have in Portsmouth. Or are the local authorities all going to agree that by age 6 they should be doing X, Y and Z, by 7 they should be doing A, B, C? Or are they just going to make them, the local authority person who comes out to meet you, make their own mind up on the day, what today they think you should be doing? There's absolutely no consistency with it whatsoever. And that is really concerning, particularly when you live in a local authority that already pushes their luck a little bit with regards to what they can and can't do.
OK, well, we're short on time, Claire, but I must just very, very quickly just say, because we've obviously gone straight into the heart of the issue here, you obviously educate your two boys, and very briefly, you're an advocate of this. You would say that parents should be considering this if they feel that's the best option for their family. Oh,
absolutely. Best decision we ever made, taking my eldest out of school. My youngest has never been. But, yeah, absolutely love home education, love this life. It's fantastic. My children are so happy and thriving, and we have our home ed family. And that's what they are to us now. That's our home ed family, and we love them all very much.
Great. Well, thanks for joining us this evening. Claire Marshall from Portsmouth, who home educates her two boys. We did ask the Education Secretary and East Hampshire MP Damien Hines to come on the show tonight, but the department declined our offer. They sent us a statement, though, saying we consulted with parents about home education guidance. Our public consultation and call for evidence on home education closed at the start of the month. This was open to anyone who wanted to give their views, and we were especially keen to hear from parents. We'll be looking at all the responses and we'll respond in due course.
BBC Radio Solent.